fun it seemed and personable and everything like that. But then again, then finding and talking to people, it seems almost that like Marvel was run like a real company, and DC was kind of run like a zoo. But the perception was that. But Stan was a big influence on me because then I put myself out there.
Well, Stan was the voice and face, not just of Marvel, but of comic books in general. Right, there was...
And became friends with Jim Steranko to this day, and I started annoying these people at their offices. So when I got out of high school at Cardinal Hayes, which I went to with George Perez, the George Perez, who I helped get into the comic business, I kind of walked into Marvel and they said, hey, I got ideas for some stories. And they said, well, if you write something, then we'll buy it. So I wrote something, they bought it, and then it was very different back then. But I started, Stan was the personality you kind of saw on TV.
It was the Amazing Spider-Man annual from 1984 where Jonah Jameson gets married and the Scorpion interferes, plotted by DeFalco, drawn by Ron Frenz and Bob Layton, and Stan scripted it. And I get the script, and there's a few lines I had questions about or issues with, and of course I thought, why would I even, how am I going to do that? How am I going to call Stan and say, gee, would you mind making a few changes? Because you don't really understand the character. So I call him up, and he was great. He was the most professional writer I ever dealt with. If he agreed with my suggested change, he would compliment me. If he disagreed, he would state his position and make his case. But then, having been an editor all that time, he said, but you're the editor, so it's your call. And he certainly never said, I'm Stan Lee, I'm too busy printing. So he understood both sides of the desk that way.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Really, it's kind of like a price barrier as well. Like, when I started reading comics, they were 35 cents. And so that was still, part of your allowance then. So it wasn't like insignificant, And when they went up to 50 cents, I had to make hard choices about what books to keep. But, it was like if you spent, now a comic book is $4 and, with a cost, or $6 or $10 or whatever. And, let's be honest, it's like when you pay your $5, you want to get your $5 worth, So I think, with those Marvel comics, absolutely what Billy is saying. It's like if you read the older comics, they had no concept of drawing a story out. It was wham bam and rocketing along. And all of those early Marvel comics. Even when I first got into them, which is in the late 70s, you would go and you would buy Origins of Marvel Comics at the bookstore, and then Sons of Origins of Marvel Comics, and with all these classic stories written by Stan Lee or scripted by Stan Lee, and they were absolutely compelling. There was no way you were not drawn into them, but we were drawn into them not because it was just like this incomplete story. It was because it seemed like a larger piece of this universe.
Took over the world, and our heroes from the Bronx had to fight him. And then all of a sudden he ran for president, and wait, I have to finish this book now. But anyhow, Stan, and I've been buying a lot of the Marvel.
But I informed Stan I was doing it, and when I called him to tell him that I had gotten the contract and I was doing the book, he said, well, I wish you good luck with it. And way before that, he had said to me, if anybody was going to do it, Danny, I'd want it to be you. But this time, he said, good luck with it, but I've been interviewed too much. I don't want to be interviewed. But I had moved recently to Washington Heights, where he grew up. And every once in a while, I'd send him a picture of the George Washington Bridge, which is very prominent in his personal mythos. He came from a very poor family, and Even though they couldn't afford it, they bought him a bicycle, and the bicycle he drove across the Washington Bridge when it was new, and it was his gateway to freedom, and he would buy a foot-long hot dog on the other side of the bridge. So I would just take pictures of the bridge at night, the bridge in the rain, the bridge, you know, at sunset.
My own comic. Well, it kind of became a hit in the spring of '94, and then I went back to San Diego as an exhibitor, and now I'm wide-eyed, I knew no one. And then my wife goes to get lunch, and she's like, well, I'm gonna go get lunch at the concession stand, and she comes walking back with Stan and Joan Lee. And she didn't know anybody either, and I'm like, she's like, oh, I want to introduce you to my friends I just made. Now, she knew who Stan was, obviously. But her and Joni were online getting hot dogs or salad, I don't know what they even had, burgers or whatever, and they struck up a conversation that we had a Doberman at the time, and they had Dobermans. So she's just talking to this very beautiful, elegant woman, as she describes about Dobermans, and then Stan comes walking up, and I think he was alone. Because I don't remember him having a handler, and then they all became friends, and here comes my wife walking up with Stanley and Joan, and he's like, you did this, is terrific. I'm like, oh my God. And then after that, he just liked me, and it was wonderful. And how funny is that? That weird ways how you meet people.